On today's episode of Setting the Pace, David Cole and Carson Stafford join me to talk about three players we're keeping a close eye on this upcoming season. How can their role evolve? What does that mean for the rest of the roster? And how can they help this Pacers team not only this season, but in future seasons? Then, in our second segment, at the very end of this podcast, we're talking about Giannis Antetokounmpo. Look, there's been a lot of rumors swirling around Giannis, his future in Milwaukee. What does it look like? How does that impact the Pacers if he stays or if he goes? We're talking about it all today on Setting the Pace.
This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
Pacer Nation, what is going on? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast, Setting the Pace. I'm your host, Alex Golden, and not joining me today is Michael J. Facci. Facci is busy doing other stuff, so he's going to be rested and ready for the next two episodes for this week, but filling in his stead, we've got David Cole and Carson Stafford back. David, you've got on the Caitlin Cooper basketball she wrote Popsicle shirt. How does that shirt feel? Give a little shout out to Caitlin.
Yeah, it's an excellent shirt. I just happened to come across it on Twitter. I've been wanting to support her merch, and just some of the shirts just didn't. None of them really spoke to me. It's like that's the one, right? Like if Samson Folk does some kind of a basketball / Dune crossover shirt or hat, I'm buying that in a heartbeat. But with her, I was like, I want to support her. I want to buy a shirt. Just none of them were ever like, that's the one. This one I saw, I was like, that's immediately. I was like, that's the one. It's like all the blue and gold popsicles, the little basketball at the end. Ezra, when he first saw it, he said, "Dada, that shirt has popsicles and basketball," and I was like, exactly, it's great. And it just like the fit and the style of it all was really great. There was tons of options too. I just thought like most of these things, you just go get a shirt on TeePublic or wherever. It's like you get a couple options maybe. There was like 5 or 6 different styles and cuts and then all the sizes and things, and so I was able to pick what I wanted exactly, and I got it, and it's excellent. Definitely worth the $25 or whatever it was, plus after shipping, it was like still not too expensive, and it's a very nice shirt for what I paid especially, so definitely would recommend it. I also have to shout out happy belated birthday to Jermaine O'Neal. Michael J. Facci had 2 chances to give a birthday shout out to his favorite player in NBA history. I don't know.
He's the president of the fan club and didn't even say happy birthday to him.
Happy birthday, Jo, though. Here in the Cole household, we do actually really mean it when we say that we're fans of Jermaine O'Neal. We will not forget your birthday. I don't know, Facci, maybe fake fan? I don't know.
Ooh, shots are fired. I'll let Facci defend that on tomorrow's episode, but I do have to ask you before I go to Carson here on the other side of this conversation. Are you a popsicle guy?
I was not until like the last year or so.
Okay.
With Ezra, with having a little kid, it's like popsicles are a treat that is not, you don't feel terribly guilty as a parent about giving them. And so because of Caitlin Cooper, I know that she has talked about Outshine, or is it Outshine? Is that the name of it?
Outshine?
Yeah.
And then
And so
Nicey Treat is also the big one.
yes, Outshine I've seen in stores a few different places. So I got some for 4th of July, and we had a few, and I had some of my nephews in town. And, I loved them, loved them. Like, they tasted like the fruit, not just like, "Oh, this is a generic, like, dye flavored popsicle thing." It was like, "This is the fruit I'm eating, tastes really good." And Ezra liked them, and so I've bought them a few more times since then. So, we're not saying that I'm anywhere near the level of a Caitlin Cooper, but, have become a popsicle fan over the last year or so.
Yeah, I would say that the mango Outshine is probably my favorite flavor of all the ones that I've tried, but I'm willing to try more. Now, Carson, I know you're probably feeling a little bit better than you were last time you were on this podcast. You had basically remind everybody what happened last episode, because like you looked like you were extremely tired on the last podcast.
Yeah, so I had been in Europe for 2 months, and I think I'd gotten back. I don't remember exactly how the timeline fell, but essentially I got back to Indy like super late on a Thursday night. Um, went to sleep, slept until like 4 a.m. So I got like 6-ish hours of sleep after being insanely jet lagged, and then woke up at 4 a.m. the next morning, drove 13 hours to very far north, Minnesota, almost to Canada. I think it was like an hour and a half, 2 hours from the Canadian border, for a wedding, was there all weekend, and then 13 hours back, had 1 day recovery, and then the next day flew to Boston for a new job that I was starting, so, then I was there all week long, so that was I think we recorded, like, right when I maybe got back from that.
Are you feeling better
Um,
now?
I am feeling better now. Ironically enough, it was hitting me because today was a very long day. for me, and I feel like I don't have that many long days, like, I work from home, this shouldn't be that hard, I can roll out of bed at 8:50 and be ready to go by 9, but today was just not quite, the best, but, here we are ready to talk Pacers basketball, and I do feel that even though it's been a long day, uh, better than last time for sure.
All right, so Carson is going to be quick to purchase a Caitlin Cooper popsicle shirt because he just wants to fit in like the cool kids. But I do have to ask, are you a popsicle guy yourself, Carson?
I am, big Popsicle fan.
Okay. Favorite flavor? You like Outshine? You a big Outshine fan?
So my I mean, I would start to say my guilty pleasure, but I don't feel guilty about it. I'll just say my pleasure are those like ones that you buy and it's basically just juice in the clear plastic tubes and then you throw them in the freezer. I think like Flavor Ice is the one like this is the brand that I always remember. I go absolutely feral for those. Let me tell you, like the blue to me, like blue is the best, and then like pink and red are kind of like depending on what you're feeling, tied for that A tier, and then you have, like, the grape and the orange is the worst one, that's always the I think I have some orange ones chilling in my freezer right now from, like, 2 years ago that never got eaten, but love those, and I also love the icy ones that I guess you could consider them popsicles that are more of, like, the ones that come in, like, the little cardboard tubes with the, foil, tops that you, like, kinda rip off.
Okay.
Those are so good. So,
All right.
I
Well,
like I like the sugary ones that don't taste like real fruit, unlike David.
I see popsicles just aren't for me. Like they're fine. I mean, I like them. I don't seek them out. I'm more of an ice cream person. So
Mm,
if I can have a dessert, I'm picking ice cream. Sorry to all my non-dairy people out there, but I just love me some ice cream, and my love handles love it too. So
mhm.
anyway, uh, let's get into today's show. So Carson and David both sent me two topics I wanted to discuss, and we're going to start with Carson's topic here, which I think is really interesting. So Carson wanted to go through and basically talk about one player we're kind of keeping an eye on that we want to see maybe have a breakout year or whatever, right? So I just think at this point, it's going to be interesting to see where we go with this category. So, Carson, what do you think for your first player?
Yeah, I think for any listeners who have become well acquainted with my, takes on Pacer basketball might be expecting me to say a Benedict Mathurin here, but I am zagging in another direction because I felt a little on the nose. Um, but so the guy that I'm really, really excited just to kind of not even necessarily I'm not like looking he's not the guy that I'm looking forward to seeing the most, but just somebody who I'm like, I really want to see how he looks at the end of the season after he's able to get a lot of playing time and a lot of reps compared to the beginning of the season. And that's Jarris Walker. I think Jarris is at a really interesting point in his career for a number of reasons. I've like in the past little bit, I've seen some Pacers fans be a little hard on him for a few reasons. Some of them might be a little fair, but it's undeniable that he will show flashes of like, man, there's really something there with this guy's passing with like a lot of times he goes to make a decision and it's just like and it's an execution flaw, not it's like that maybe the right idea, but just the pass wasn't quite there. But to me, I think what a lot of people forget about Jarris is that he was for the longest time, I mean, he played the four in college. He was really more of a front court type player. And then when we drafted him and then traded for Pascal. Actually, maybe I have that backwards. Um, but essentially, adding Pascal really kind of changed how we would look to integrate Jarris into our offense, and he kind of has become more of a perimeter play, make like a wing, and so a guy like he's had to adapt his whole way of playing basketball to fit in this system, and I think he can succeed at that. But I think we're at getting to a point now where he'll be able to really take advantage of these extra added reps. And I think I saw somebody point out, maybe it was Caitlin Cooper, but that a lot of teams, at least in the preseason thus far, have run a lot of zone against the Pacers. And we're gonna need to have multiple guys that we put in the middle of that zone, and sometimes Rick would he would throw Andrew Nemhard in the middle of that zone as, like, that kinda secondary decision maker, and I've really like him in that spot. I really like Benedict Mathurin in that spot because he can get downhill, he can knock down that shot, but he can also get downhill and attack the rims, but those guys especially with our injuries, need to be on the perimeter probably, and so if you put Jarris in that middle spot, kinda in that nail free throw line area as that secondary decision maker as to, "Hey, do I need to kick it back out? Do I attack the rim? Do I kick it to the corner?" Just his decision making and his development of skills, I think is gonna be really, really interesting to watch on the offensive side. Defensively, I think he'll just continue to grow. I mean, his hands are phenomenal. It's like we have a in our group chat a joke that he's gonna rip your best player once a night. And it feels like and he's so good at that. So I'm not necessarily as thinking about like what is he going to look like defensively, but I'm thinking about more in this offensive system. Now that he's kind of had some time to learn, and now he finally gets to actually make those decisions and do a lot more.
Yeah, I will just say that Jarris Walker was drafted before the Pacers actually traded for Obi Toppin and
Mm,
before they got Pascal Siakam. So I think there was a lot of people wondering, could Jarris be the starting four at some point? And then they
mhm,
trade for Obi. Then they're like, okay, probably back up Obi, and then he didn't even get that. So it's just, yeah. So it was interesting because he was drafted as a four and then had to transition to a three, which is a hard thing to do. So,
mhm.
David, I'm curious your thoughts on Jarris Walker and what you've seen from him throughout his young career, maybe what you're looking forward to seeing this year.
Yeah, I think, like, a lot of it, I'll echo what's already been said, so I don't wanna just repeat a bunch of stuff all over again. But just big picture, I think that, like, we've seen flashes of things that we wanna see more consistently later on. And that's, I think, where some of the complaints have come from fans and from coaching staff and all that kind of stuff. And I don't think I need to like say this to the coaching staff. I think they understand. But some fans, I just really quickly did a quick check while Carson was talking because the first thing he let off with was how some fans can be frustrated with Jarris a little bit. And I think that's fair to some extent, but I think we have to keep in mind. Do you guys, off the top of your head, know who the youngest player on the team is?
Right now, currently?
Yes,
Oh, good question.
I would
Is
guess
it
Johnny Furphy.
it's Johnny Furphy. He's
yeah, yeah.
20. Who's second?
It's Jarris, I guess.
It's Jarris, he's 22. He's the second youngest player on the team, and I think that is yes, he's been on the team for a couple years now. This is his 3rd season coming up.
Mhm,
So, like, this is his 3rd season, but he's only 22 years old. Like,
mhm.
he is still very young. He's the second youngest player on the team. And I just think if you focus on, this season developing some of those youth and giving them a chance to, and I'm not saying he's let them just like just ruin whatever, but just give them a little bit longer leash than what you would in a season that you're like you're actually gunning for a championship. But when not just Jarris, but Johnny and other people too. But we're talking about Jarris right now. I just think that like if he is still struggling and we're giving him a longer leash, a longer runway, and is still just really inconsistent, specifically with some of the motor type things, and there was some stuff in the last game where it was like it felt like some sloppy he always been kind of a little occasionally been kind of sloppy with the ball or sloppy on defense, but then he'll have incredible, defensive possessions and incredible passes. So it's like the spectrum of like you're never gonna get like just a decent play from Jarris. It's either like he is excelling or you're like, "What was that, dude? Like, what were you thinking there?" And so if we can see a lot more either just, like, in the middle, just a more standard average, and I think that's part of why he's lost minutes to people like Ben Shepherd, because Ben Shepherd's never gonna be an 8 or a 9 or a 10 out of 10, but he's gonna be a 6.5, like, every time, all day all game long, whereas Jarris could be an 8 and he could be a 4. It's like it's all over the place, and so, just seeing some consistency out of him, I think would be really great, but just for fans, I think just, like, be patient for a little bit. This guy is a high pick for a reason. I don't think it's fair to be like, "Oh, he's a bust," or, "He's never gonna live up to that potential." He's only 22 years old. Let's see what this year has to hold. I think that like if we can see another improvement, then maybe in year 4, year 5, we can see like an actual real jump from him, and he could be consistent backup, maybe even starter, depending on who's still on the team and what's changed. I don't think that him starting at the 4 at some point in time in the Pacers' future is out of the realm of possibility still. And so I think that's something to like just keep that big picture in mind and kind of take it one day at a time, one year at a time.
I always find it fascinating that, Jarris kind of became Pascal's protege as soon as he got traded here. And I think that the Pacers front office, coaching staff, they see something special in him. And I think that by you kind of revealing the age once again, just kind of puts things into context because it is easy to kind of like, oh, he's already in his 3rd year. Like, where is he really developed? Because I saw some people that didn't like his answers when I asked him about what he learned about the finals run, and he was like, "Yeah, you don't have time to pout." And people were like, "Why would he say that?" And then, once you get around him, though, you realize he just kinda talks freely, and I don't think he thinks about everything he's saying, and that's part of being 22 and not really thinking about everything you're answering to the media and everyone taking it and twisting it one way or thinking it means something else. But I think you were right, right there on top of everything, David, with talking about the consistency for Jarris Walker. I think that if we can see more of a higher level of consistency of just playing within the system and not trying to do too much, like, it's going to be a lot easier for him. Like, I trust him probably a lot more than half the guys on the roster that are currently playing right now too, even though there's been some ups and downs. He's been playing with some weird lineup combinations in preseason as well. So it's kind of like, okay, what does he look like if he's like with the starters instead of an Isaiah Jackson? What does he look like with that group? What does he look like with Obi Toppin and the starters? Like there's just different ways they can utilize him that I think could be really interesting. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Jarris. I think that there's probably I think for me personally, I think he fits the system better in terms of, like, full potential than Mathurin. Even though I do like what Mathurin brings to the table, he's just a totally different player, and he's learning it, but I just think Jarris has more natural instincts and skill sets that fit what the Pacers like to do. But the big thing that I always come back to is that force, and that's what Rick Carlisle and the front office have said consistently about him. It's like, play with force, play with force, play with force, and I don't like that they have to keep hammering that point home with him all the time, but I'm hoping in year 3 with a bigger opportunity, Carson, that he is able to kind of piggyback off what they're saying and just become like this guy that is at least like 85% of the time playing with force compared to maybe 50 to 60%.
Yeah, you see him out there, like, going around on the court, and you can tell this is a really strong, fast, athletic dude with an insane wingspan, like, a great build, and it really does feel like we just don't see him necessarily take advantage of that as much, so definitely with you there in terms of just, like, wanting to see that, um, and that's gonna prove to be huge, especially if he can become like which I don't know if we've really seen kinda we've talked a whole lot about his offense, but I I feel like he has, so much potential in terms of the versatility that of positions he can guard on defense as well, and just in terms of, like, he could become one of those guys where if IQ-wise, with his physical tools, I mean, he's really strong, really long, um, I don't see why he couldn't be a guy that couldn't guard 1 to 4, or if a lineup goes small, if you're playing Golden State and they throw Draymond out there at the 5, I don't see why Jarris couldn't guard a guy like Draymond. And so that just it really opens up the kind of uniqueness of what you could do with that offense, in scenarios like that because of that defensive versatility of his.
Any final thoughts on Jarris, David, before we move to your next person?
No, I think that's a great point. Just the defensive thing is something that's also been a little inconsistent, and I think that it's been talked about before, but it's just ironic that he came in as a non-shooting defensive player, and along with Shepard, who was a shooter that was not really good at defense, and then they kind of became the opposite. I just think if he can figure out the defense and can keep if the shooting can be for real, and not even that it has to be as good as it was last year, but just like if he can be labeled as like a shooting threat, it's going to shoot 35 to 40% consistently every year and play good defense, like, that's why I think that, like, there's no reason to write him off yet. Like, he has shown that he can do certain skills that fit what we wanna do, that fit with Tyrese, that fit with a lot of other things, that fit an area of need once Pascal is, past his prime in however many years. I'm not gonna put a number on it because who knows? He may have a long career ahead of him. I don't really know, but obviously, he's a lot older than Jarris. So, at some point, you could see Jarris taking over that position, and so I just think, like, just give it time, a couple years, and at that point, maybe we do wanna move on, but, I don't wanna give up yet because he's shown flashes of being the kind of player that NBA teams covet around the league, so
I think he would get a very nice, return in a trade package if he was kind of like that big chip. I mean, it's a lot to give up a guy that's only 22 years old, especially on a rookie contract that can still provide, really good stuff at multiple positions. And so, I mean, any team would be desperate to have a player like that, even if he is coming off the bench, right? Like, I just think any team would be really excited about having a player like that. But, I mean, the Pacers have talked about needing more size at the 3 for the last 3 or 4 off seasons, it feels like. And with them transitioning Jarris to that spot, like, yeah, I think with that 7'2" wingspan, it's kind of like a great opportunity for him to kind of take it this year. I don't know if he'll be able to do it, outplay Neesmith and or Mathurin, but like it's there. He's going to get a lot more reps than he's not going to get, especially if there's an injury that happens to somebody. Like he's going to be one of those first guys that gets called in that starting five at that wing position if there's an injury there. So he just has to stay ready and be consistent. I think things will be good. So let's move over to the next player that we're going to talk about here. And David, who did you want to bring up?
Yeah, so I won't name a bunch of names, but I did think through several different options, and I won't name the options in case you do use one of those players.
Yeah.
But there's several different people I was like, well, this is interesting and that's interesting. And I just kept coming back to Taylor Peter, and I'm going to go with Taylor Peter. And,
Okay.
and now this might be kind of off the wall, and it definitely is. I'm willing to admit that. But the reason why I think that this is an interesting player to watch is it has Summer league, he pops, right? He looks good. And you're like, "Okay, that's probably just a fluke though, right?" Preseason, he looks maybe even better. Given the context, I'd argue he looks better because you're not just playing against summer league players, you're playing against second string and third string, like actual NBA players, not just G leaguers and third stringers. And it just seems like it's a more competitive environment. He looks even the same, maybe the same level of quality, maybe even a little bit better. And there was this conversation that, like, I know that Alex, you have shot it down a few times of compare people wanna say, like, "Oh, Johnny Murphy's gonna come and take, Ben Shepherd's minutes." And I was always kinda like we never talked about it on the podcast or anything like that, or anything like that, but I was always kinda confused. I think that the reason why that started is just because people see Ben Shepherd as the last person on the totem pole of minutes, and so they just picked him to take like, Johnny to take his minutes, but really, Taylor Peter is the player that plays like Ben Shepherd. And so, like, if anyone's gonna take his minutes, it would be Taylor Peter, and I don't think that's, like, given or anything like that. It's definitely he's gonna have to earn it, and or Shepherd's gonna have to screw it up. But just the fact that they play similarly in terms of they are playing with force, they're playing, like, hard basketball, they are, both of them seem to have a knack for finding the open spot on the floor and being ready to shoot, in terms of, like I just watched one of the games, it wasn't last night, I think it was the game on Saturday.
Yeah, versus
um
OKC.
yeah, it wasn't even, like, at the end when he was, like it was one of the first shots he took. He had passed the ball, I don't even remember who it was, to a guard. He's a guard, but passed it to, like, the point guard, and then he just, like the guard cut d right down from the top of the key towards the free throw line and met with a trap, and Peter just relocated, like, 3 feet to his left and had an open line from the point guard to himself on the left wing, just took it shot immediately and hits it, and it's just like that kind of smart basketball play that you're just like, "Okay, this guy's gonna find time on a team somewhere." And so whether it is we're using him as a trade chip in a couple years or we're using him to replace somebody else, like, does he replace, like, not in the same way, but, like, if, a couple years TJ retires, a couple years, maybe we have to move off of somebody else, at the 2 or the 3, does he end up becoming a backup too? Just given how consistent he seems to be on defense and how good of a shooter he's been and where Ben Shepherd has not been as great of a shooter, I just could see a world where he becomes an important player for one reason or another. Which and I think what makes it interesting to me is not that I think he's gonna be some superstar, but just that, like, he's a nobody, basically. And I don't mean that as any kind of a slight on him. I'm a huge fan already. I just mean, like, no one saw him even being, like, an 18-point scorer in a preseason game, and that was a surprise. And so from a team building perspective and from a, uh, like, having assets perspective, being able to be like, "Yeah, we have Ben Shepherd, Taylor Peter, Johnny Furphy, Jarris Walker's 4, like, young players that people and Ben Matherin's roughly the same age as all those guys. I think he's even younger than he's 23, so he's even younger than a couple of those guys. This all these young players, I think is important to pay attention to because especially this year with Halliburton out, because we're gonna have a core the next couple of years, and I don't know exactly how many it's gonna be, but Tyrese will be back, right? And we'll have this core of Tyrese, Nesmith, Pascal, TJ McConnell, like the older guard, and then they will either, like, decline and be on the bench, or they will retire, and we'll have Tyrese with some younger group of players in theory, like a Jarris and Ben Mathurin, a Shepherd, a Taylor Peter, and so it's like to see which of these players are gonna be in the long-term plans for the Pacers or which could be in the long-term plans, I think is interesting, and so I'm gonna be watching Taylor Peter.
A couple things on Taylor Peter for me. I think that he does fit this system very well. I think that he knows how to have knows where to be at in the right spots, like you mentioned, relocating to get the open three. And a lot of times it takes guys some time to figure it out, but I think he just kind of gets it. And after his, outburst on Saturday against OKC, 18 points on 4 of 8 shooting, I believe, from three, like just had a really nice showing, 5 assists, 5 rebounds, like really just kind of filled that spot. We didn't see the same production against the Spurs, and they played their core players a little bit longer. So I don't want to jump the gun too much, but I think there are signs there of things that could be like, this guy could be a potential rotation player. And I think when you're thinking about the Pacers, like consolidation trade has always been like a talking point for this group. And you're thinking about if Tyrese is healthy and TJ is healthy, like now you're trying to find minutes for guys that are like probably quite a bit higher than Taylor Peter on the pecking order. So it's one of those things where it's like injuries could play a factor into how much Taylor Peter actually gets to see the court this year. But if they like what he brings to the table, and he's one of those guys on a two-way deal, does it give them more confidence to be willing to part with somebody that might be above him because they believe he could become the next Ben Shepherd, the next whatever in the system? So that to me is something to keep an eye on with him, just because obviously he has done some good things when asked to play a bigger role. And I'm not saying I'm sold on him yet. I'm intrigued, and I want to see as he continues to develop, like what does it look like? Because I've been fooled once, David, by rookies having some pretty strong performances, and then they just kind of fall off, aka Chris Duarte. So I'm looking at an older guy here in Taylor Peter that played a lot of college basketball. I think the good thing about playing a lot of college basketball and being kind of a journeyman through college as well, he never wanted to overstep his role. And I think sometimes you have to worry about that and navigate that a little bit as a coach and as like a teammates. Do we know how to like get this guy to be in the best spot possible? And I think Taylor's not going to worry about that. And that's kind of the same thing with Ben Shepherd, kind of like a no maintenance kind of guy. So it's interesting. Shepard's going to be up due for a contract here shortly as well. What does he demand on the market? I mean, I'm sure there's going to be a handful of teams that will want Ben Shepherd from just seeing how impactful he was for the Pacers, even as like an eighth man, ninth man in the rotation, just like deep playoff runs back-to-back years. Like he wasn't a negative when he was on the floor for the most part. He just plays basketball the right way. So I just think that it's interesting. I was not expecting you to pick Taylor Peter for this exercise, so I'm glad that you went a little bit different in terms of what maybe was more of a typical answer for this. But Carson, we'll get to you here. Any strong takes? Anything different to talk about with Taylor Peter?
Not really. I've tuned in for like a couple quarters of each preseason game, so my Taylor Peter experience is limited. Um, but from what little I have seen of him, it doesn't take long just to while watching him play to see and feel that like, oh wow, this guy is generally a pretty high IQ player, has a great feel for the game, like David was saying, knows kind of how to slide into spots. Um, and that makes him a good fit on this team. Obviously, the shooting is always valuable, but especially with this group, that's going to go a long way. Um, and he kind of reminds me of the type of player that like pops up on a Golden State Warriors team where it's like they're just like looking for a diamond in the rough and they always seem like they magically find one. So like I the Pacers have done such a good job, like one of, if not the best team over the past few years at like finding talent in the second round and on the fringe of the draft. And even if it's not quite, then maybe it's just guys that fall. But I think that that is recipe for winning basketball is when you can kind of do like, I mean, OKC is another one of those teams where it seems like they're always finding guys who can just like come in and say they send a few guys out in a trade and they upgrade one other position. It's like they hardly even lost anything just because in that draft, it's like they have granted for OKC, it's because they have a bazillion draft picks. So it's like, yeah, of course they got somebody waiting in the cannon there. So, but they're another one of those teams that it seems like they're always finding these just like random guys who can come in and are seemingly ready to play high-level NBA basketball, can shoot well, have a good feel for the game, aren't total defensive liabilities, and I think previously, I mean, in other eras in the NBA and even 3, 5 years ago, it was like, yeah, those two-way spots, those, like, your 12th, 13th, 14th, 15th man on your roster really were not a huge difference makers, but as of the past couple seasons, we've written and maybe part of that is with apron rules, maybe it's just the direction that the league is heading with more deep teams come playoff time, but those fringe moves are starting to matter more and more and more, so, it's easy to say like, "Oh, it doesn't really matter, we won't be able to find minutes for him, this or that," but those are things that at the end of the day really do matter and contribute to winning basketball.
All right, David, any final thoughts on Taylor and Peter before we get to my last or the last person here with me?
No, I'm excited to hear who you pick. I wanted to leave some meat on the bone, and so I definitely did. So let's hear your take.
Yeah, for sure. So I will say this, like, I didn't come in with any notes. I didn't have a specific player in mind. I wanted to hear who you guys brought up. And I feel like on the podcast, we've been talking a lot about your typical stuff, your Andrew Nemhard kind of being like the point guard for for Halliburton. Like, what does that, turn into? Matherin having a bigger role this year. I think all that stuff's been talked about. We've definitely over talked the center spot, but we haven't really dove into like the specifics of like all the players. And so I'm just going to go with Isaiah Jackson. I feel like Isaiah Jackson for me is someone I really do believe in, and I think he has potential to be pretty good. He's only 23 years old, and that's what's crazy. He's still so young because they drafted him at like I think he had just turned 19 in that winter before they drafted him. So like he's super young. He's obviously coming off the Achilles injury. He's added a lot of muscle to his upper body. I think he added about 20, 25 pounds of muscle and just trying to get thicker and bigger. It's been rough for him in preseason. I'm not going to lie. I haven't loved his overall play. He's been in a lot of foul trouble, but I've seen this guy have some productive moments in the playoffs. Now, granted, it's been as a backup big to Miles Turner. It's not been with this extended role and this bigger opportunity. But I do believe that he does know how to play in this system, and I do believe that he can figure things out as it goes, because if you're looking at this center depth, we're going to talk about this later this week, Facci and I, there could be some cause for concern. And there really could be some like, man, I just not overly impressed because like the J Huff trade, like it acted like we were getting somebody special. So far through preseason, J Huff has been J Ruff more than J Huff. So I just not loving that. And obviously James Wiseman has been really hard to evaluate because of where he's actually played his minutes at. And then Tony Bradley's probably looked the best to me because he's gotten more run with the starters and he knows the system pretty well because he played throughout the playoffs last year with this group. So I just feel like with Ijax, like we hear Carlisle talk about very good at like setting screens, diving to the basket, good at the dribble handoffs, that kind of stuff. We know that he's almost better at guarding guards and wings than he is actually guarding centers, which is kind of problematic. But I do think that, hey, depending on who you're playing, like if you want to switch defensively, like Ijax can switch onto somebody that Miles Turner could not switch onto because he's got that ability to guard in space where Miles didn't have that. So he can really fit this team. He's got to be better about not putting himself in bad spots to foul and then also making the right reads on offense. There was a play last night against the Spurs, and it was in the third quarter, and I do not know what he was thinking, but he was probably about 18 feet away from the basket, caught the ball, had Wemby on him, did like a little jab step, like he was going to shoot over Wemby from 18 feet, which Carlisle already says like threes or layups is what we like. We don't like mid-range jumpers unless you're Pascal, basically, or Tyrese pulling up because they're guarding you so tight. He doesn't like them. Especially when you're Isaiah Jackson, you don't ever shoot him and you don't ever make him. And so Isaiah Jackson decides he's going to pull up on Wemby. And it wasn't Wemby that blocked him. It was the defender behind him that blocked him and stole the basketball. And so it's just better on-court awareness, I think, is going to be huge for him offensively. Know your role. I mean, pull a page out of Tony Bradley's book and just do what you're good at and don't overstep your boundaries, basically. Be a solid rebounder, be a shot blocker, guard in space, and just play big. I do believe in him. I don't know if he's a long-term starter. I think it could be a really nice backup big to a better starter if the Pacers want to go that route, but he's only making around $6 million, Carson. So I just feel like he's right at that right threshold there for the amount of money he's making. I wouldn't pay him any more than what he's making right now either, especially coming off the injury, but this is a great opportunity for him to prove himself, and I'm hoping that once he gets his feet wet a little bit, he'll figure things out and settle into that starting position throughout the year. Carson, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I've been holding real estate on Isaiah Jackson Island for several years now. You can pull early receipts from my first few appearances on this podcast, and I was high on him just because, and I've said this multiple times, but anytime a player has like a few things that they do really really well, that is just totally innate to their nature as a player. And to me, Isaiah Jackson has a few of those traits, whether it's blocking shots or screening or whatever it is. He does have a few of those skill sets. And so I think this year, one of the things that I think will be interesting, and I don't know if I wouldn't say necessarily that it's something that I'm concerned about, but I'm interested to watch and see is like how much do the Pacers actually ask of Isaiah Jackson? It's are they do they ask him to make key decisions with the ball in his hands if they're running their offense? I mean, like Miles last I mean in our offense for the past few years, it's not uncommon for Miles to come out and he not even necessarily be looking for a three. He has his back to the basket, but he is looking for that pitch, that toss to Andrew to the on the other side, or Tyrese coming down, like kind of coming off a screen or looking for a handoff type deal. And so it's part of what I wonder is, do the Pacers do they ask him to make some of those reads? Do they ask him to make any of those plays? Or do they kind of reorient the offense more towards, you know what, we have Andrew to make decisions, we have Ben to attack, we have Pascal to attack. We can open up a little bit more room for Neesmith to attack. We've seen him do that a little bit in the playoffs, is kind of be more aggressive, putting the ball on the floor. And so maybe with those guys, you give them a little bit more responsibility and then just don't ask anything of Isaiah Jackson. And you should say, you know what? We want you blocking shots, setting screens, crashing hard on the glass, and running when you can and being a lob threat. And I think probably that maybe that's where we're at the end of the season. Again, it's tough to say this early on, kind of what his role in the offense will be. But that's something that I'm interested to keep an eye on is kind of what do they expect of him and what do they ask him to do in this system.
Yeah, and just real quick before I go back to you, David, that's kinda what I was saying, like, just follow the Tony Bradley path. Like, just
Hmm.
be very limited in what you do, like, no, like, you're the 5th option on offense. You're not somebody that's supposed to be taking these shots, like, just kinda know your role, and I think Pascal, when I asked him last night about how do you integrate a guy like Cameron Payne into your system so quickly after just getting here Thursday, not really having a lot of practice time, and, "Hey, here's 2 preseason games, figure it out with this group of guys you've never played with," like, how do you do that? And he said, "It's hard, don't get me wrong," he's like, "Our offense and our system is very simple, but we like to keep it simple, but if you run, you cut hard, you play fast, and, you're gonna look like you belong, but if you don't, then you're gonna look like you're lost out there." So I just feel like it's not that it's like that much of like a throw everything at, Isaiah Jackson right now, but I do feel like as he is trying to integrate himself with this group, understanding what his role actually is. I think sometimes that's the problem with a lot of guys is the role identification. They want to outplay their role or outstep their role, and it can kind of like cause issues with how the train's moving, right? So it's like just stay in your lane, figure things out, don't get off the track, and if you do your job and everybody else does their job, like this could be very, very fluid and it could work very well. But if not, it could be problematic. So David, your thoughts on Isaiah Jackson, maybe something that we didn't touch on yet.
Yeah, I did not pick a center because I'm just kind of sick of all of them right now. That's definitely recency bias. That's definitely like that's not long
I'm right there
term.
with
Like
you.
I'm not like, oh, trade Isaiah Jackson. He's garbage. It's not what I just this was an opportunity. These preseason games, and there's lots of different reasons that could be at fault here. Isaiah Jackson's missed a lot of time with injury. Is he 100%? Probably not. Is he even if he is 100%? Has he had time to knock off the rust and to get back into? Probably not. Right. So there's reasons to be like, just be patient and let's figure this out. I just, as a fan, first and foremost, I was really excited to see Ijax come back in this system and in a safe environment like preseason and just like seem like he belonged. And I'm not saying he doesn't belong. It just didn't ever really feel like that. It was very obvious that you have a backup center playing with the starters, whenever he played with the starters. And I was just Jay Huff, I thought I had a couple games here and there where I was like, "Okay, maybe," and I think it was just after the second game, I was like, "Maybe we should be starting Jay Huff and give Isaiah Jackson time to get back from his injury, to get the rust off, and to get everything going, and you just play the guy that's been consistently playing basketball, he's the guy that's more like Miles Turner, you just plug him in and go." And then he had a terrible game Monday, like, one of the worst games that any of our centers has had was Jay Huff's game last night. It was
That was
rid
probably the worst performance I've
oof.
seen of any center in the preseason.
Yeah, it was brutal. And I mean, and somebody in Milwaukee had a game of 0 points on, like, 3 shots and, 1 rebound and something like that in, like, 15 minutes, so that was pretty bad too,
Yeah.
but my point, Isaiah Jackson, even, with Jay Huff having that bad game on Monday, Jax had a game where he had, was it 4 fouls, 3 fouls in, like, a handful of minutes,
He had 3 fouls last night in, like, 2 seconds
and it's
against
just
Wemby.
like, yeah, yeah, it's just like, it doesn't really matter how talented you are. It doesn't matter if you like, all the reasons why Carson was, like, excited about him and likes him, I agree 100%, but none of that matters if you are gonna go on a spree of 3 fouls every other game. If you're gonna have these situations where you cannot stay on the court, uh, even if like, I'd rather have someone be bad, but, like, not, like, terrible, but, like, be, like, not as good as you, but be able to give us the minutes and, like, be able to fill in the role than have you come out here and, like, commit a bunch of fouls, cause a bunch of problems, then you're gone, and now somebody worse than you is having to come in early because you, like, put us in a hole, and then now you can't play because 'cause you're in foul trouble. It's like, it's just especially in the beginning of the game. It's one thing, like, Miles would occasionally have games like that every once in a while. Generally, though, whenever Miles was in foul trouble, it would be, like, 3rd or 4th quarter, he'd pick up a couple random fouls, and all of a sudden, he'd be at, like, 4 or 5. It was pretty uncommon that he'd, in the 1st quarter, have a couple of fouls. It happened, don't get me wrong, but it was not, like, a problem he had. It would be one thing if Ijax was getting, like, 1 or 2 a quarter, and it was a, building up kinda thing, but it's like he'll get 2 or 3 all at once, and it's just it confuses me, and I don't know if it's a head thing where he's getting in his own way, where it's like he's getting frustrated and then playing worse and then getting another foul, getting more frustrated and playing even worse and kind of a snowball. But and that's not the end all be all is the foul thing, but it just I really wanted him to come out and at least look solid and then have Jay Huff also be able to showcase his shooting. He's been a terrible shooter. And Wiseman has looked basically like, why do we have Wiseman on the team? I think
Yeah.
keep Tony Bradley and get rid of Wiseman. That's where I'm at with
Yeah.
Wiseman. He seems to be in all ways worse than and, like, the things that he's the best at, one of the other 3 are better than him at.
Mhm.
So you know what I mean? So it's like, why
I
don't we
just
just get and I understand he's still not super old, but he's been in the league for a long time. This is his
Yeah.
6th year, even though
Yeah.
he's only 24. And I'm like, I don't know. At some point, it's like if it was gonna happen, it's gonna happen. And he just has looked really like isn't totally. I don't know. He looks awkward. I don't know. So Ijax
Well,
definitely is the one to watch out of the 4. I agree with what you guys are saying there. He's the one that I knock on wood. He be can at least by the end of the
knock
year
on wood.
look.
Here we go again. Another
Yeah,
episode of saying
yeah.
knock on wood.
Knock on wood. I have not heard a single Taylor Swift song from the new album, so that definitely is in reference to that.
Okay,
Uh,
Kashi.
I haven't. Hodges heard it 15 times. He
I
said it
know.
himself. I haven't heard it
Yeah.
at all. So,
I'm sorry. You're
uh,
missing out.
that's fine. Um, I would say to wrap it up with Isaiah Jackson, I would say he's the one that I'm looking for, and I'm hoping that will at least be able to show me that he can be a rotation center. And the other ones, I don't really have any faith that they can. J Huff could maybe be like a second or third string, maybe I don't know. But the other two, I'm like, yeah, no. So hopefully he can turn it around, knock off the rust, and be more consistent. But I think I'm at the point now where I'm kind of frustrated, and I'm like, I just need to be patient. Like I was saying about Jarris Walker, I don't know why I'm patient with Jarris Walker, and with Ijax, I'm frustrated. But that's where I'm at. So I hope he can prove me wrong.
Yeah, there's a lot of moving pieces here at the center position, and it's like I feel like I haven't been able to get a real evaluation of James Wiseman because of who the heck he's playing with. Like when you're spending most of your time out there on the court with Gabe McLaughlin and Jalen Slauson, like guys that aren't going to be on the roster moving forward, it's like, how am I supposed to really evaluate you in a game? Like, let me see James Wiseman be the backup center instead of Jay Huff for a game, just so I can kind of see what that looks like. Because How does James Wiseman look next to Obi Toppin? Is that something that could work together with that second unit? Like, we just don't ever see it. And I understand, like, they do believe a lot in Jay Huff, and I get it, but it's just like, I don't want to dive too much into the center combination because we're going to do a whole episode on that. I will just throw this out here as a little bit of a teaser or just like a little bit of a hot take. I would not be surprised by at some point in the season we see the Pacers go centerless with their starting five, and Obi Toppin starts at the five, and then you see Isaiah Jackson as the backup five, and maybe you play Furphy, Walker, Shepherd, and the point guard, whoever that is. I mean, that to me, honestly, like, it's probably your better players. Like, why should I be taking away minutes from a Johnny Furphy because I'm trying to let Jay Huff play the five? You know what I mean? Like, if Jay Huff isn't ready to play, sorry, Johnny Furphy's ready to play, Jarrett's ready to play, Shepherd's ready to play. We don't have to have this standard center out there every single time. We saw how well Obi Toppin at the five worked in the playoffs. Not saying you want to play 82 games like that, but if you're Rick Carlisle, like, you have to figure stuff out. And I mean, Obi's got to be better in that spot at a consistent level. But, like, I'm not going to lie, watching some of these games, I was like, man, would Thomas Bryant have been that bad of a big to bring back? Like, he's looked, Thomas Bryant throughout the regular season has shown me more than anything Jay Huff has shown me so far, and James Wiseman. So maybe the Pacers got a little too cute with that one by not bringing him back because of how much I felt like he was a good backup center in the regular season behind Miles Turner. And then it just goes to show you, at the end of the day, when you're making draft picks, do not think, oh, we've already got Jalen Smith and Isaiah Jackson. We can't take Trace Jackson Davis. Oh, because Jalen Smith's going to leave you next year? Really stupid, in my opinion. And once again, this is where I'm just looking at the Ryan Nembhard with Dallas. It's just like, oh, we don't need another point guard. Yeah, you do. You should have drafted him. I don't care. This is ridiculous. Like Taylor Peter, like Cam Jones, but Ryan Nembhard led the NCAA in assists, and you know what Nembhards do. You have one in your building for the last 3 years, and you still passed on him. I mean, overthinking much is something the Pacers have done quite too often in the draft, in my opinion. But I know we wanted to talk about one more thing here, so we won't have a lot of time to dive into it fully, but I do want to go touch on that for maybe the next 10-ish minutes, David. So, Carson, I do apologize. We haven't gone back to you here in a second. Just let everybody know you're doing okay over there.
Doing great.
Okay. I feel bad because it was like I was talking, then David, then me again, and then Carson just like nothing to say.
My only point was gonna be that, hey, what about could I interest you in some Thomas Bryant minutes? Oh wait, but you brought it up, so we're good.
We're in unison. All right. It's when you have 3 people on a podcast, it's hard to like balance out the time and navigating. I just want to make sure that everybody knows we're trying to do this fairly. But David wanted to bring up another topic for the podcast, so I'm just gonna let you set this one up.
Sure. And I don't think we need to dive into this deeply. I don't think it's a complicated topic. It's something that interested me. There's been a lot of talk about the Bucks. There's been a lot of talk about Giannis. There's been a lot of talk from Pacers fans and Bucks fans back and forth the last couple of years. It's been probably the best rivalry in the NBA. It's Pacers Twitter, Bucks Twitter. Like it's been fun. I will say. I'm not like and you and I went to Milwaukee, had a great time. Have met really nice Bucks fans. I had a couple of interactions. I've seen a couple of people on Twitter, Bucks Twitter, that I thought seemed to be nice, reasonable people. And then there's a bunch of people that are acting crazy. But again, some of that is, you're on a screen and you feel enabled to be crazy because you're just a faceless,
Twitter
like
bot.
a Kuzma Stan account or whatever. So, it's like you don't have to have, your name and face to it. So you feel emboldened to be crazy. But my point is, there's been a lot of like, oh, wouldn't it be hilarious if, Miles went to the Bucks and then Giannis left the same year or the next year? Wouldn't it be so funny? Or what if the Pacers got Giannis? Or what if this, that, or the other? And I was right there with everybody else. Like, oh yeah, it'd be so funny. It'd be the funniest thing if he just left right after Miles left. And like all these Bucks fans are like, oh, this is the Miles Giannis. It's gonna be incredible. It's gonna be the next unstoppable duo. And then he just leaves. I wouldn't wish that on them because I don't want that to happen to us. But that was just like, the irony was very apparent. The more I thought about it, though, the more I was like, should Pacers fans want Giannis to leave Milwaukee? And I think the answer is no. I think the Pacers fans should want Giannis in Milwaukee until he retires. And I'd love to hear you guys' thoughts. I won't give all of my thoughts because I don't want to just to give the whole conversation. I just think they're in a situation where they're not gonna be able to build a championship contending roster around him because how they've treated their draft picks, how they've treated their cap space. And given what's going on with the Dame extension and waiver, or however you would phrase it, I don't know how they stretched and waived him.
Stretch and wave,
Um,
yeah.
they're gonna be they're gonna be in a position where they can't build a true contender around him. Like, they might be able to build a better team eventually. They might have some internal development, and they might be able to get off Kuzma and, I mean, not in a, gross way, but get off his money and, be able to find a way to make better use of that roster spot. But for now and in the foreseeable future, I don't see a way that they're gonna be able to make a championship a team that can contend for a championship out of these recipes. But if they trade Giannis to a team in the East, that could be a contender,
Yeah.
and that could really backfire on the Pacers and Pacers fans. And so that's where I'm at. I think that I think that Pacers fans should want him to stay. For one, it's a great rivalry. For two, I think it's better for the Pacers anyways that he stays.
Yeah, I'll go to you here in a second, Carson. I just want to say this real quick. For me, it's like if they trade him to the West, I think it's better for the Pacers.
Yes.
If they trade him to a team in the East that's already strong, that could be worse for the Pacers. So I think it does depend on what team he's traded to. But I will also say, in terms of the Miles Turner stuff, I don't know if you guys saw this or not, but he was pretty quick to put on that Milwaukee Brewers jersey. You know what color the Brewers are? They're blue and yellow. He couldn't wait to get the blue and yellow back on. So Miles Turner was having a little PTSD. The grass wasn't always greener over there in Milwaukee. So, I know he splashed some threes against the Bulls on Sunday night in preseason action and looked pretty good in Giannis's first game with him. But yeah, it's just kind of crazy. And I will say Tyrese Halliburton's Dodgers are up 5-1 with the bases loaded in top of the eighth right now for game 2. They already got game 1. So Hallie's Dodgers look like they might be going up 2-0 on Miles's Brewers. But Carson, I'm curious what David had to say there about Giannis and be better off for Milwaukee to keep him for the Pacers standpoint than to trade him.
Yeah, no, I would say I agree. And obviously, like, the main wrinkle is, like, Giannis going to New York. And I like, we've seen some, like, little things here and there about, um, some noise with Giannis in New York, about his interest in New York. And obviously that would make me so frustrated on many levels, because of Brunson, Giannis, and I mean, I don't know exactly what that deal looks like, but I think ideally you go Brunson, Giannis, Cat, and then you just figure out those other positions, and if OG and picks, or if it's OG and Mikhail, and picks is what it takes to get done. I like the Cat Giannis pairing a lot.
Mhm.
And I like the Giannis Brunson pairing a lot if that's my team, but
I will
th
just say this: I don't think they can do any trade in New York without Cat going back to Milwaukee.
that would be that makes me feel better, ironically enough,
Yeah,
especially because
Giannis and
then
Mitchell Robinson. Yeah.
yeah, um, but you would have, and then in Milwaukee, it would also be funny for them to just be stuck with Miles and Cat at that point, but, um, which yeah, that's
Two
whole
Cat guys.
Um, but yeah, but if he's going west, like, I think there's a lot of teams, obviously, like, Houston has a treasure trove, and I think Houston will learn a lot about their team this year as to, like, what they need, what they don't need. They're poised to make a run. I think there are some reports that, like, OKC would never be interested, um, which I don't know if I believe that. I get if they were like, "No, we're not interested," but I would say never there. And then, I mean, who knows? I think last year there's a little bit of San Antonio noise, which like a Giannis, Wemby, uh, front court is terrifying, to be quite honest. But again, if it's not in your conference, it's not one of your rivals, and it's not one of the few teams that I hate seeing succeed, at any level, then it is what it is. Um, yeah, and I guess the other thing too with New York is kind of like, David, what you're saying, which I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of what you were getting at, is because I feel like New York's obviously the leading team there, but I even felt that way about New York's coaching change. I was like, when they actually fired Tibbs, I was like, man, they fired Tibbs. New York's gonna get better. Like, they're gonna be a better playoff team probably, because I don't want to go down all that rabbit trail, but I felt similarly in that way.
David, any more thoughts?
Yeah, I just, I didn't wanna give away everything that I thought, just to leave some meat on the bone for you guys, but I definitely was number 1 considering probably that it would be New York would be, the destination. I also thought more likely it would be East than West. Maybe that's wrong, but I just feel like if I'm Giannis, I'm gonna stay in the East just because the East is less competitive, generally speaking, and the odds of you going to a contender are higher just because, like, as long as you go to one of the top, like, 4 or 5 teams, like, even the Hawks or the Magic, like, if he goes to one of those teams, as long as the trade package is leaving behind something of substance, it'd be pretty difficult, like, for that team to be worse than the Bucks this year, I think. And so it's just like it makes a lot of sense for it to be East. I didn't wanna go through all those permutations and whatever else. It's not worth all that discussion right now. It was just something that I've seen a lot on Twitter because of Pacers and Bucks fans are on Twitter are constantly going back and forth, and because Tyrese is being a troll, and I love it, and so it creates new conversation, and it's just been very top of mind the last couple of months. And so I just finally, like, the last week or 2 was like, "You know what? Actually, I think that I would think that I want him to stay, to Giannis to stay." And even just beyond that, I rooted for Giannis to win his first championship,
I
and
did
at some
too.
point in the last couple of years, even before all of the rivalry happened with us, I started to be a little bit more like, "Yeah, I think that I don't like him as much as I thought I did," and then all the rivalry that's happened in the ball gate stuff, and it was like, "Okay, he's kind of being a bit of a tool, so I'm gonna go ahead and, like, stop rooting for him," obviously. But just generally speaking, as an NBA fan, I would like to see uh, small market teams keep their talent. That's what we are, and that's what I want us to have. So, like, what's it gonna get me to wish ill of a very similar team? I don't know. So that's kind of where my head was at. Was like, I know that a lot of Pacers fans think, oh, it would be really ironic. It might be even funny to some extent if he just leaves them in shambles after Miles left and all of that, and it would help us in the division, I guess. Sure, but I don't think we need it. I think we're fine. I think we're gonna be able to beat the Bucks with Giannis as long as Tyrese is healthy and our core has not been destroyed. I'm more worried about Cleveland than I am about Milwaukee for several reasons, but yeah, I think that, like, Pacers fans should probably, generally speaking, be happy to have Giannis stay.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting to see what happens with Milwaukee and Giannis as he continues to add his brothers to mix just to kinda keep him happy. It's just interesting. I think the funniest intel I've ever seen was someone said Russell Westbrook should change his last name to Antetokounmpo. I thought that is class level, like, Sintel stuff right there. That's, like, the best thing I've ever seen from Sintel. So, but yeah, it's really interesting to me because I think with this Bucks team, like, you're gonna see some nights where they look phenomenal because if all their guys are hitting threes and Giannis is able to do what he does, like, it's gonna look like, "Man, this makes a lot of sense." I just don't buy that it's gonna be consistent enough for them to really be like this powerhouse in the Eastern Conference. I could be completely wrong. I'll be the first to admit it if I am, but I can see there's gonna be games where like Miles is gonna go like 5 of 7 from 3. Gary Trent Jr., we've seen him be hot, and in the playoffs, and same with AJ Green. Like they've got shooters on this roster, which I've wanted that from the Pacers a little bit more, is a little bit more consistent 3-point shooting with how they're built. But to me, it's like it depends on where Giannis goes. Like I think ultimately the funniest scenario is if Giannis leaves and Miles this is like the best player on that team, just in terms of like a so mad at Turner he left the Pacers standpoint, if you're that kind of fan. And then like depending on where Giannis goes, I think there's a lot of teams that could make some sense, but like who knows who's gonna have the assets to trade for him. Like one team that nobody's really talking about is like Boston. Could they just trade Jaylen Brown for him? Like could that just be like a pretty easy swap? Like, I could see them doing that. I mean, at some point, because Jaylen Brown's gonna just keep getting more and more expensive, and it's just like, is he that good? Like, is he a top 10 player? Probably not. Could you trade him out west? Could you get somebody that makes some sense out west for him? Like you mentioned earlier, Carson, Houston and San Antonio are some teams that could be interested. I know a lot of people said OKC probably wouldn't do it because they don't really need him, but like him and Chet and J-Dub and SGA together could be like one of the craziest 4 out of a starting 5. Like that would be insane. I'm sure they'd be asking for one of those 3 in a trade back, but I just don't think they would get it because OKC would say why. And then if you look at the Lakers, like they could throw everything they have pick wise at him to try to get him there if the Bucks want to rebuild. But I don't know. It's weird to think about, but I just like you said, I don't know how they're going to really build this roster. They've already handicapped themselves so much with the Dame contract, and like that's just sitting on their books for the next 4 years. They don't have their draft picks. They're investing a lot of money in guys that are like at that 30-year-old age and higher, and they're just going to keep getting older with your Portises, your Turners, your Gary Trent Juniors, that kind of group. So I don't know. I mean, if you're a Pacer fan, like I don't think the Bucks are the biggest worry that you should be focused on. I mean, I think the Knicks could be really, really talented with or without Giannis. Like I think they could win the championship or at least win the East this year without Giannis. Obviously, the Cavs are right up there. Orlando's getting better. So you just want Tyrese to get healthy. And then I think the $1 million question is like, should the Pacers trade for Giannis? And we don't have time to dive into all that, but it would more than likely include Pascal Siakam going out. And you might think, yeah, Giannis is a significantly better player than Pascal. But when you're talking about fit, how the Pacers like to play, what Pascal means for the culture, you could make the case that it would do more damage to not have Pascal and to have Giannis because it would kind of slow how the Pacers play. So I'm just throwing all that out there, even though he's like a top 5 guy in the league. Like it's just a lot to talk about. So Carson, any final thoughts here on Giannis as we wrap this conversation up?
No, I think, yeah, not especially not without going what a Giannis, trade looks like for the Pacers. I won't open that can of worms on you this late in the
Yeah.
pod.
Yeah, it's a little late. It's a little late. So yeah, well, maybe we can revisit that in a little bit throughout the season. We'll see how the season's going. We might change our mind on if we want to trade for Giannis, but that's just where we're at. But anyway, this has been a lot of fun. I really enjoyed talking about different players we're kind of looking forward to seeing this year. And if somebody we didn't mention is someone that you guys want us to talk about, put it in the comment section on YouTube and let us know what you're thinking. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, hit that thumbs up button. Let us know what you guys are thinking about the podcast. And if you're listening on the audio side, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. I'm at Alex Golden NBA. Foch will be back tomorrow. He's at _FACCI. The podcast can be found at PacersPod STP on all your social media platforms. We're on TikTok now, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, Instagram. Just check it all out. It's going to be a lot of fun covering the Pacers this year. But thank you guys, Carson, David, once again for coming on. Really enjoyed the conversation. And Pacer Nation, we'll talk to you all tomorrow. Peace out.
Setting the pace, going to the top. Setting the pace, going to the top. This is your #1 podcast. Sweeping every team. We gon' need a mop. Smooth.